December 22nd edition of the Courier Paperboyz. I'm Doug Newhoff. I'm joined today by the sports staff, Jim Sullivan, Jim Nelson, and Nick Pateros. Merry Christmas, guys. Got a lot going on this week, as usual. Let's start with a look back at Saturday's Big Four Classic down in Des Moines. Iowa had its hands full with Drake before pulling out a 70-64 win. And then UNI and Iowa State followed up with a great game that the Panthers hung on and won that one 81-79. Sully, you were there. I don't know how much of the Iowa-Drake game you got to see, but this Nicholas Baer is making a pretty big impact for the Hawkeyes.
No, I didn't get to see a lot of that one, but certainly that's true. And listening to the game on the way down the radio, he made an impact right away. Iowa was floundering a little bit in the first half, and he came in and gave him a lift, and with Utah in foul trouble, so that helped. And then after that, Drake hung in there the rest of the way, gave him a tough game, and I think acquitted themselves very well from what I was able to ascertain. And Iowa, of course, got the win going forward. Now they found another guy that had some depth, and that'll help. The main event, though, was the nightcap, UNI and Iowa State. Just a tremendous ball game. Wes Flachman was outstanding, especially in the first half. Jesperson, by the end of it, was shooting from maybe about 25, 30 feet and still connecting on a lot of threes, so that helped. UNI got enough production out of the big men inside, Clint Carlson, Bennett Cook, and Friedman to get by. They survived being out-rebounded. They survived a big night from George Niang. So it was a great game. Iowa State did have a chance, I think, to win it at the end. The defense picked up a little bit for the Cyclones, but a couple of costly turnovers hurt them. And now we'll see what happens with UNI from here. They've knocked off some giants, and we'll see what happens when they in Hawaii and going down the road in the Missouri Valley. But they've established they can play well against the best. Now they just got to be a little more consistent.
Yeah, Iowa State was 9-0. That was their first loss. They were ranked 5th. I kind of hesitate to call it an upset anymore. I kind of expect UNI to play that kind of basketball when they play those kind of teams, and they usually don't disappoint me.
Well, they really didn't this time, and it was interesting the way it worked out. A lot of people, and myself included, were wondering about the inside matchup with Niang and McKay versus UNI's, like I said, triumvirate inside of young players plus Jesperson. And really, you have to give them credit. They really turned it around. It turned out that Jesperson was just as tough a matchup for Iowa State as Niang was for UNI. Maybe not in terms of as many points, but he had a big enough night and hit some big shots when UNI needed him the most, and especially when Iowa State came back and tied it at 66. Jesperson went right down the court, scored, and then they got a lead again, and then Iowa State had to chase them the rest of the way. So I think that's a fair point that UNI can play well against the best. They've done it before. I think they're 6-2 now against Iowa State in Jacobson's time there. So they have a proven track record. And like I said, now it's just a matter of doing it against somebody else.
Well, your thoughts on what Jake's been able to do against these elite teams? Even you go back to Kansas, Wichita State, but when they were good, he's beat them, and then the North Carolina, and Iowa State here this year. It seems like he's always finding a way to get the best out of his team against great competition.
Well, the word fearless was tossed around quite a bit Saturday, and I think that's a fair point. They're not scared of the moment. The only time I can ever remember seeing a UNI team a little bit uncertain of itself in that sort of situation was against Michigan State at the end of that game 5 years ago when they had a chance to go to the, I believe, the Elite Eight. Mm-hmm. And that was only for part of the game. But yeah, against North Carolina, they didn't bat an eye when they got down 16. In this case, with Iowa State, an opponent they knew pretty well, they believed fully that they could win, and I think that served them well. So I think Jake transmits a confidence to his team, and as he said, especially on offense, they have the freedom to do, I wouldn't say what they wish, but certainly some freedom to take shots when they feel that they're open. And the trade-off for that is, as they put it, putting in the time. I think that is putting in the time at the defensive end, rebounding, just being there for your teammates. So there's sort of a give and take there, and I think that serves that team particularly well.
I think we saw, too, a little bit more of what we saw when Iowa State played Iowa, and that's kind of a lack of interest at times at the defensive end by Iowa State. It's not too hard to get shots right now against the Cyclones, especially in transition. I think they have a mindset that they're just going to outscore you, and that's you get a team that plays just a little bit of defense and gets a few stops, and that changes the game.
I agree that near the end, when they really had to have it a couple times, they did get some defensive plays. Monte Morris made a couple steals.
With pressure on the ball.
Yes. other than that, the thing that surprised me the most was Jameel McKay. Now, I was expecting Jameel McKay to be able to be a real force inside. I thought he was going to make it very difficult for Washburn to score from there, that he'd force him to dish or just block a shot. I don't know, I don't think I think he may have led the team in block shots, McKay that is, but it wasn't that intimidating force you'd expect. Washburn went right down the lane a couple times and scored. Clint Carlson went inside of him once and scored with a left-handed shot. It was very surprising to me that he wasn't more of a force. Niang, I think, had a tough matchup. He couldn't get out there fast enough on Jesperson. Morris, which surprised me too, couldn't stay with Washburn at all. I mean, I thought he'd at least, contest him a little bit, but he really didn't. So they have some work to do. You just wonder if they'll be able to get it done, if they'll ever change that mindset and play, if not 40 minutes of good defense, 25, 30.
They'll get another good test tonight. I think they go to Cincinnati,
Yes.
and the Bearcats are off to a good start. They're like 10-2 or something like that.
Tough place to play.
Tough place to play. Another pretty athletic team. I'm sure they can get up and down the floor and score some points. So they got their hands full. UNI's out in Hawaii for the Diamond Head Classic. They play Hawaii at like midnight tonight or
At
something.
12:30 Wednesday morning.
And they play again tomorrow night. Depending on whether they win or lose will determine the time. But kind of an interesting field out there. I would think they would have a legitimate chance to win that tournament.
Yeah, the other half of that bracket, should UNI win, they'd face either Washington State or Oklahoma. And I don't know a lot about Washington State, but Oklahoma would be another intriguing matchup. They're facing somewhat the same capabilities, although the Oklahoma's inside guys is a little bit more physical than anyone Iowa State has. I think they're very quick to get up and down the court and score. So it's, to a degree, the same matchup, but maybe a little bit more athletic than Iowa State is, and maybe a little bit deeper. So again, they'll be faced with another quote-unquote giant, and if they get to that point, we'll see how it goes.
And New Mexico's in this field, so they
Yeah, they could play New Mexico again.
Which-
I would think they'd like to do a little better this time. than
Yeah,
they did.
right. Speaking of UNI, former Panther running back David Johnson had another big game Sunday for the Arizona Cardinals. Career best 187 rushing yards, scored 3 times, got loose on a 49-yard touchdown run, I think it was. That was really fun to watch. I mean, broke a couple tackles, just kind of looked like Marshawn Lynch in his prime, I guess there. A lot of people would like to say. He's having a great rookie season, but you kind of have to wonder what kind of numbers he would put up if the Cardinals weren't so intent on maybe bringing him along kind of slowly. They went out and got Chris Johnson, a former All-Pro type running back, and they had Andre Ellingson back from last year, so they've really worked DJ into things slowly, or else he could have some huge numbers.
Exactly, yeah. I think so, but I think if you look into Bruce Arians' history, that's the way he's always been with rookie running backs. He brings them along slowly. This isn't just a David Johnson case, I don't think. But, David is adapted, and he's been an impact player really for him from day one. I mean, it was the return game and the receiving game right off the bat, and now more as a running back. I think he was a hybrid third down back early on, and now a bigger role with Johnson hurt, and I think Ellingson's hurt too. So he's getting to show what he can do right now, and he got 10 games to prepare for it, really, to be the A guy. I think it's been beneficial for his career and going forward, just being able to sit back and learn from those veteran NFL players, and now he's shining, and at the right time for the Cardinals too. If you look at it, boy, to have a fresh running back to plug in there, not many teams can say that.
Yeah, I was reading a national media story posing the question, is David Johnson the guy that can get them to the Super Bowl now? So it'll be really exciting to see what he can do for Arizona here in the playoffs.
And you look at the rookie class this year, I mean, it's a pretty good class of rookies with Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota and Amari Cooper. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And, he's right up there in the top 7 or 8 in most statistical categories, rushing, receiving, all-purpose yards, total yardage, all those kind of things. So he's having making a pretty big impact, and it's been fun to watch. One thing that kind of struck me listening to the game, watching on television, Chris Collingsworth just couldn't seem to get over the fact that a guy from northern Iowa could be putting that kind of performance together.
I got exactly the same vibe, and I don't expect Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth to be experts in Northern Iowa football. I don't expect that. That said, you can do some research. You can find out that that there's been not a huge amount of Panthers that got in the NFL, but a decent stream over the years, going back to James Jones 25 years ago, Kenny Shedd, Chad Reinhardt. Meester played in the league 15 years. I mean, it's not like this is the first time this has ever happened. And that bothered me a little bit that they seem to have this, like he came out of nowhere. Well, not really. Not if you know college football, and not if you know more than I, or bother to do any research at all in it. And that was sort of funny to hear that, but maybe now the next time they'll dig in a little bit and they'll know a little bit more about what they know.
Yeah, so I think it comes back to that bias that Power 5 conference type people and the NFL have against FCS football. I mean, they just don't give it the credit that it really is due. If you look around the league, there are probably a lot of guys that are making an impact.
Well, I'm stealing this piece of trivia from someone, but somewhere they pointed out that there are 2 NFL quarterbacks now from Eastern Illinois in the league.
Yeah.
And when A.J. McCarron started for the Bengals on Sunday, he became the first Alabama quarterback to start a game in almost 30 years. So, again, it's not like there's a huge, obviously the Power 5s have produced most of the players, but over time, you see them from Eastern Illinois, Illinois State, UNI, North Dakota State, college for heaven's sakes with Fred Jackson. So it happens.
Yeah, another interesting story I heard the other day, or on talk radio or somewhere, there's some rumors out there or whatever that the quarterback from North Dakota State, what's his name?
Carson
Wentz, is one of the top 1 or 2 draftable quarterbacks coming out this year.
That's what I've heard. I've mentioned it many times in previews. Our previews are what I'm covering him this year is things I've read. He's going to be one of the top quarterbacks taken, if not into the first round. I mean, he's got the size. He's 6'6". He's about 230. He's mobile. He can run. He can throw any throw there is. I mean, it's an amazing run of quarterbacks they've got, and the one they got playing as a redshirt freshman is going to be pretty good too. But yeah, it's interesting because I think he's healthy enough to play now. Wonder if he's going to play that January 9th game after not playing for 10 weeks. But but with as much money on the line, will he play? That is the other thing you look at. So
Yeah, it's hard to go away from what got you there, I guess, basically.
My guess would be that if Easton Stick struggles, you'll see Carson Wentz, but only then.
How can Easton Stick struggle?
I don't know. Maybe he
Yeah.
throws a couple picks, really gets hurt, something happens,
They
I
don't
wouldn't
take-
rule Easton Stick will play. He'll start. He may go all the way, but there's a scenario out there, I think, where you could see Mr. Wentz.
They don't take enough chances, I don't think, for Easton to struggle. They put him in a position to manage the game, and then they do everything else so well that he can get away with being very average if he has to be. If he's very good, they'll run away with that game too. Interesting. Another developing story in the NFL, the Carolina Panthers, 14-0. Looks like they have a very real possibility of getting to 16-0. Have you guys had a chance to watch these guys play, and what do you think?
I would say they've got a really good chance. They're a legitimately good football team. I can't speak with any great knowledge about the schedule. I mean, I don't think the division is particularly good this year, but they've got a lot of players. I mean, Cam Newton, I think, is going to be the MVP, and he's had a heck of a year. I don't know that his passing percentage is what you look for ideally in an NFL quarterback, but he's resourceful. He beats you with both his arm and his feet. I watched the very end of the game they played with New Orleans, I think, on the road, and that was a game where they had to come from behind to win. They did it. They blew a lead against the Giants this past weekend and hung in there and did it. So I don't think that's another case where you talk about being unafraid of the situation. The Panthers seem to be there, and I think Ron Rivera deserves some credit for that. And then now, as we get farther along, it'll be interesting to see when the Miami Dolphins emerge from their cocoon and start hoping that the Carolina Panthers lose, which I think Mercury Morris usually leads that parade. So that'll be irritating, but I see no reason why the Panthers can't go in the playoffs 16-0 and maybe go a little farther.
Yeah, Cam Newton gets such good protection too. I mean, he gets to sit back there in that pocket and just pick things apart, and they're good enough to really make a lot of things happen. And their schedule's favorable. They play, I think, at Atlanta this week, and then they've got Tampa Bay at home to finish. So 16-0 is looking, pretty good for the Carolina Panthers.
Now, Nick, you've been you're a Bears fan. I don't know if you remember 1985 particularly well.
No.
But what do you suppose is going on through the minds of a Carolina Panthers fan, knowing what the Bears endured during that year where they were going in and they lost to, of all people, the Miami Dolphins?
Yeah, I have no idea. I was 2 in
Well,
1985.
Well,
But yeah, I have to imagine, you know, this game against Atlanta is going to be a tough one. Atlanta, it seems like they're a team that starts off great every single season and then they just kind of fade. But they have some pieces there. You know, it's a tough place to play in that dome. I don't know if you can consider that an automatic win right there.
Well, the bookies in Las Vegas give the Carolina a 70% chance of winning that game on the
So
road.
there we go.
And they only give them a 77% chance of beating Tampa Bay at home, so they don't see much difference where they play. Let's talk a little bit about the year of sports, I guess. A lot of big stories during the past year, and we're kind of wrapping it up here as we get closer to January 1st. What stands out to you guys?
Well, on the Iowa angle, I was kind of doing a little research, and I almost forgot about it, but Zach Johnson winning the British Open here over the summer. He won the 2007 Masters and now a British Open 8 years later, and really kind of asserted himself as you know, one of the best, you know, maybe even a Hall of Fame golfer.
Yeah, you know, it's just, I think age 39 and nobody's won a major after the year, I think, a long time since anybody has won a major past the age of 40, but it just seems like he's so consistent with what he does. He goes with a game plan every time out there, and, you know, and he doesn't change from it. You know, it's the game plan. This is how he's going to attack the golf course, good, bad, or ugly, I guess, and boy, he had a great year, you know, and I think the Ryder Cup's coming up, and he's been a very good Ryder Cup guy, and he is, yeah. I think you think Hall of Fame golfers. I mean, how can you keep a guy that wants 2 majors out? You know, and he's one. And I think active-wise, he's behind Tiger and Phil and a couple other guys. He's right up there with career
He's got
wins.
12 tour wins, yeah, and a guy that started out playing golf at Drake, he's playing in the Waterloo Open back in the day, and you see from humble beginnings to where he's really taken off.
From a University of Iowa standpoint, it's been a renaissance year. We began the year with all sorts of questions about Kirk Ferentz and could he coach again? Could he get to recapture the magic? And I think he answered that. Rick Heller did a magnificent job with the baseball team. Brought them back from I don't know what you describe this as, mediocrity, something worse than that, and made a great impact there. So those 2 stories, I think, would have to be at the top of the list. The other thing would be Iowa State. A couple of coaching changes. Fred Hoiberg departs. Paul Rhodes departs. We don't know what the full impact of either one of those changes will be, but certainly those programs are going off in a different direction. So there's that, and of course UNI's success at the beginning of the year in basketball, and now the success they've had starting in the next season, has been something that's been, I think, great fun for not just Panther fans to follow, but the entire state.
You look at my beats. You look at wrestling, and 2 major storylines last year for me is Max Thompson, the 24th 4-time state champion in Iowa history. You covered that all year long, a great story. And then the Kyvan Jackson story, winning his NCAA title and just wanting some ice cream afterwards. You know, that's a great story. A guy, you know, loses his dad, battles bad shoulders all the way through, and then he beats a guy that in the finals that ends up being the world champion later in the year. So, you know, that was the 2 highlight stories for me as far as my wrestling beat, you know, with Max and Kyvan.
Yeah, the one that jumped to mind for me too, I mean, you mentioned most of them, Sully. I mean, UNI basketball has certainly been a great story, but I think going 12-0 in the regular season for the Iowa football team is an accomplishment that's really, really hard to do. And so I put that one right up there too. It's been a good year in a lot of ways.
They even survived the doubts of Paul Feinbaum and Colin Cowherd, which is something that's hard to do, or hard to tune out, that's for sure.
And boy, that last drive, 22-play drive, and I was busy covering another football game on the West Coast, but I would like to see that drive again. How do they make it 22 plays without Iowa making 1 stop or 1 play?
Test of wills.
Yeah.
It was a battle. It was a game of inches, no doubt. Well, that's all we've got for today. As always, you can catch up on all the action at WCFcourier.com or in our print editions. We'll be back next week, and in the meantime, we wish everybody a Merry Christmas.